Today we are demonstrating a few basic snow anchors we can build using a snow picket. Hi there, I'm Jason. Of rock, ice, and snow, snow is the most difficult medium for placing anchors. The super wide variability of snowpack in combination with the various angles of snow slopes can make these placements the most precarious. On the flip side though, the lower angles of snowy terrain do also reduce fall forces. Besides our ice axe and crampons, the next most common tool we see in snow climbing is the snow picket. So today we are going to talk about 3 different snow placements using this tool while discussing a few considerations that may impact our placement choices. And let's start with the first consideration, and that is we are often balancing the strength of the anchor with the risk we face in setting that anchor up. In slightly simplistic terms, the stronger anchor configurations often take more time to set up and, maybe more importantly, often require more awkward body positions that increase our risk of falling while making the anchor. The easiest of the 3 placement types we are showing today is the vertical picket with a runner or cable connected to the top of the picket. This placement makes the most sense in hard snow. Soft snow is just too loose to hold a vertical picket. But because of its ease, this is likely the placement we would make as an initial placement for a crevasse rescue. Glacial ice and snow are usually pretty firm, however. To place the picket, first, according to the National Ski and Mountaineering School, the trainers of guides in Chamonix, we tilt the picket head back at an angle of 25 degrees from perpendicular to the snow slope. In essence, we are trying to orient the picket so that a strong enough pull would tug the picket deeper into the snow rather than lever it out. Now we want to hammer in the picket using either the hammer on our axe or the top of our adze, which is a lot harder. Hammering using the side of our axe may be necessary in an emergency, but it is not something to do regularly as it can weaken the head's attachment to the shaft. Notice that first I need to secure my own stance by having a downhill leg that is extended well outside of my center of gravity, making it harder for me to tip over. If it doesn't take 10 to 12 or even more hammers, the snow may be too loose for this vertical orientation. We need to make sure we are getting the cable or sling as close to the surface as possible without being below the surface. If we are too far above the snow surface, we are increasing that lever effect. If we are below the surface, we are creating an upward rather than horizontal pull, which can lift the picket from its placement. Now we need to consider the sun. Pickets can capture and conduct the sun's rays. That can heat the snow around the picket, melting it out, making the picket easy to dislodge. So we may want to cover the picket's head if it is going to be there for a while. And when it's time to remove this picket, it is easiest to drive it slightly downward, breaking any bonds it has with the snow, and then lifting it. A stronger version of a vertically placed picket is clipped at the midpoint rather than the top. Beginning the same as with a top clipped picket, this time we stop when the midpoint clip is at the snow surface. Now we need to use the pick of our axe to carve a path to run the attachment through the snow so that we don't get an extreme version of that upward pull I mentioned. We want this path to be as thin as possible in order to maintain the integrity of the snow that is in front of the picket. Now we can finish with driving the picket into the snow. By lowering the point of force on the picket, we've increased the likelihood that the force angle will pull the picket deeper rather than lift the picket out. Our third option is to use a horizontally placed picket called a T-slot or dead man. In this situation, we use our adze to carve a trench in the snow. It would be easy to say that deeper is better, but it's never that simple. Deeper is better unless you hit a particularly aerated layer of snow. As we dig downward, we don't want a perpendicular trench to the slope. Again, we want a back angle so that we've created a lip. Once we have our trench, we can place the picket in and, again, carve a path for the connecting material to avoid that upward pull. Just like with the last placement, the skinnier that carved path, the better to keep the snow integrity high in front of the picket. Which also means that we should borrow the snow from behind the picket to cover it up and then compact the snow down on top of it. Using these basic anchors, there are a few other things we can do to improve their strength. First, we could compact the snow prior to placing our pickets. In the right snow conditions, usually snow with some moisture in it, this can get the snow to compress and bond. However, in very dry snow or very airy snow like depth hoar, this won't help at all. If you find yourself punching through the snow easily, don't bother with this technique. Second, of course, we can add multiple anchors and then equalize them to the direction of pull as best we can. If we do add multiple pickets, we want to keep them directly out of each other's line to the direction of pull, because the weakening snow around the failed first anchor would, by definition, weaken the snow in front of the next picket. We also want to avoid having the angle between the placements be too wide, or we actually end up multiplying the forces on each placement. Third, we could add ourselves into the anchor through something like a bucket seat, where we would belay or lower, or whatever, off of our harness. Think of this like adding a shock absorber between the fall force and the anchor. In the lower fall forces of snowy terrain, this isn't as bad as it seems, although on really hard snow or alpine ice with higher forces, this may be inappropriate. Finally, while this video isn't really about any alternatives to pickets, it is worth noting that each of these placements can be made using our ice axe if we don't have a picket. We just need to keep in mind that for any equivalent of a mid-clip configuration, our ice axe's center of mass is not at the center of the shaft. We want to connect our runner to the balancing point of our axe and try to keep it there. So rather than a girth hitch, something like a clove hitch with an extra wrap would be less likely to slide up or down the shaft. Have you placed a snow picket? Where did you place your first one? Tell us about it in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share if you want to support us. For more information, you can go to our website at www.shortguysbetaworks.com. Since you may be interested in snow climbing, maybe check out our video on ice hack techniques we use while on the move, or maybe check out our entire ice axe series. We'll see you next week and keep on getting more out of that big outside.